It was almost like that van has been sitting in the woods waiting for us to come rescue it.
So if you grew up watching American Pickers, you already know the show started with a pretty simple idea. Two guys from Iowa driving around in a van, knocking on strangers' doors, hoping to find something cool buried in a barn somewhere. That was 2010. Now in 2026, one of those guys is dead. The other just launched a brand new show. The woman who ran the office announced on her 50th birthday that the whole thing was done. The brother stepped up, the expert stayed. And the supporting cast that quietly made the operation work across hundreds of episodes scattered in every direction. In 2026, the American Pickers family is a different kind of family. Here is where every single one of them ended up. Frank and Mike Wolfe weren't just co-hosts. They were friends before the show existed. They were friends when it ended. What happened between those 2 points is the most complicated story in American Pickers' history. He was born on October 11th, 1963 in Iowa. He and Mike Wolfe met in 8th grade in a small Iowa town and stayed connected across the decades that followed. Long before any camera crew ever showed up, they were already out there. Two men who genuinely loved old things, driving back roads, knocking on doors, looking for whatever had been forgotten in barns and basements and garages across middle America. That friendship was the show, not the pics, not the format, the friendship. Frank's speciality was toys, oil cans, and advertising items. His negotiation style became one of the most recognizable things about American Pickers. He called it bundling. Instead of negotiating each item individually, he would group several pieces together and make one offer for the lot. It worked consistently, it was clever, and it was uniquely his. Fans remembered it long after every specific pick he made had faded from their memory. He appeared in 308 episodes across the show's first 20 seasons. Then, in March of 2020, he took a hiatus for back surgery. He never came back. History Channel officially confirmed his departure in July 2021. What followed was a public account of the friendship's collapse that neither man handled perfectly. Frank gave an interview where he said he and Wolfe had not spoken in 2 years, that Wolfe had not checked on him after the surgery, that he sometimes felt like second place in a partnership that was supposed to be equal. Wolfe responded that Frank's struggles with pain medication following the surgery, combined with his long battle with Crohn's disease, were what had kept him from returning. Both accounts were probably true in different ways. Most complicated endings contain more than one version of the truth. There were also reports that Frank had sought treatment for alcohol abuse before his departure. The picture that emerged was of a man battling multiple serious health challenges simultaneously while watching a show he had helped build continue without him. Then, in July 2022, Frank Fritz had a stroke. He was hospitalized. He was hospitalized, and the stroke was bad enough that nobody was sure what recovery would look like. He spent the following period out of the public eye working through rehabilitation. On May 2023, Mike Wolfe visited him, a reconciliation that was real and that both men apparently needed. Frank deferred the idea of returning to the show at that point due to his health, but the friendship was repaired. That mattered. Mike was at his bedside in hospice care when the end came. On September 30th, 2024, Frank Fritz died at the age of 60. Mike's tribute was specific and personal in a way that produced statements occasionally are not. He said he had known Frank for more than half his life. He said Frank was the godfather to his nieces. He said, without complete honesty, that he would not be talking to anyone if it were not for Frank. That Frank and he had built American Pickers side by side, and that what they had dreamed of doing together had come true. He described standing in a junkyard in Georgia during the filming of the show's very first season, cold and worn out and depleted. No idea what they were doing. Just two men with genuine passion and hands-on knowledge making something they believed mattered. It did matter. That is the simplest and most honest thing that can be said. Frank Fritz died with the friendship repaired, but the show he helped build had already changed around him long before the end, and the man left standing in 2026 has been carrying that weight ever since. Mike Wolfe, the man who keeps going. Mike Wolfe has been on the road his entire adult life looking for things other people walked away from. In 2026, he is still looking, just in a different format, with a different weight on his shoulders than any previous season of his career ever required him to carry. He is 61 years old. He has just launched a brand new television show. His best friend of 40+ years is dead. His partner survived a serious car accident that could have ended very differently. His Nashville store is permanently closed. American Pickers is on a hiatus that nobody has officially called a cancellation, but that Danielle Colby announced as exactly that on Instagram, and Mike Wolfe is still picking. That character is the most defining thing about him. Not the fines or the deals, but the refusal to stop doing the thing he has always done regardless of what else is happening around him. He spent 5 years filming road trip adventures with Frank Fritz before any network showed interest. 5 years of making content that had no guarantee of ever reaching an audience. That kind of commitment to something unproven tells you everything you need to know about how he operates. American Pickers premiered on January 18th, 2010. 3.1 million viewers on the first night. The highest-rated History Channel debut since Ice Road Truckers in 2007. Within a year, it was a national phenomenon. 374 episodes across 27 seasons followed. The feud with Frank Fritz became public and painful in ways that Wolfe has acknowledged cost him something he has never fully articulated. Being at Fritz's bedside at the end was the closure neither of them could find while the show was still running and the competing narratives were still circulating in the press. His tribute to Fritz was the most personal public statement he made across the entire period following the departure. He said without Frank, there would be no American Pickers. He then, 2025, arrived and brought everything at once. The Nashville Antique Archaeology location, housed in the historic 1914 Marathon Motorworks building, closed in April 2025. A strategic decision that concentrated operations back at the original LeClaire, Iowa shop. The southern base that had reduced the logistical burden of hauling fines from the Sunbelt states for over a decade was gone. In September 2025, Wolfe and his partner Letitia Klein were involved in a serious car accident in Columbia, Tennessee. Klein suffered life-threatening injuries. Wolfe stayed by her side throughout her recovery. The details of the accident were not widely reported, but the severity of her injuries put the entire production operation on hold while his attention was elsewhere. His attention was exactly where it should have been. By early 2026, he was back on a television set. History's Greatest Picks with Mike Wolfe launched on February 22, 2026. 8 episodes. A significant departure from the road trip format that made him famous. Instead of driving back roads and knocking on barn doors, Wolfe serves as narrator and curator of stories about legendary artifacts. The 1968 Bullitt Mustang, driven by Steve McQueen. Iconic pieces of American history given the treatment of a man who has spent his entire life understanding what objects carry. The premiere drew 875,000 viewers, one of the top 3 shows on the network that week. He told People magazine that Frank had been at the forefront of his mind throughout the new show's launch, that he had been praying to find the words to bring the pieces to a point where people didn't want to change the channel. Mike Wolfe is 61 years old and navigating more change than any period since the show began. He is still picking, and the picking still matters. Danielle Colby, the one who said it was done. On her 50th birthday in an Instagram video, Danielle Colby announced that American Pickers was over. History Channel immediately said that wasn't true. So who's right? Kind of both of them, which is the most frustrating possible answer. That contradiction tells you almost everything about where the show stands in 2026. No formal cancellation, no formal renewal. A cast member with 368 episodes of knowledge saying it is done, and a network saying it is still airing and could go back into production. What sits in the middle of those two positions is uncertainty. And uncertainty is not a comfortable place for anyone who has built a significant portion of their professional life around a single franchise. Danielle Colby was born on December 3rd, 1975 in Davenport, Iowa. She prefers they slash them pronouns and has asked the public to respect that. She came to the American Pickers world through her connection with Mike Wolfe that predated the show entirely. She was working with him at Antique Archaeology before any television crew ever showed up to document what they were doing. Her role across 368 episodes was never the picking itself. She was the intelligence operation behind the roadshow, researching leads, generating contacts, providing the historical context that gave the picks their narrative weight, running the LeClaire, Iowa base, while Mike and Frank and later Robbie were out on the road. That role was genuinely essential. The show looked like 2 guys in a van finding treasure. The infrastructure that made those discoveries possible had Danielle's fingerprints all over it. She turned 50 on December 3rd, 2025. She made a video. She talked about the transitions happening in her life. And somewhere in the middle of discussing her birthday and what came next, she said it plainly. American Pickers is done. The fan community reacted immediately. History Channel responded within hours. Their statement was careful. They said they were still airing premieres into 2026, not producing new episodes right now. Could go back into production early next year. The phrase "could go back into production" contains a huge amount of vagueness. What Danielle was moving toward is much more clearer than the show's future. She has been developing the Ecdysiast Arts Museum in Davenport, Iowa, a museum dedicated to the history of burlesque, an extension of her decades-long passion for the art form that she has pursued alongside and around her television work throughout her entire professional life. She was honest about the financial reality in the same video. Without the income from American Pickers, the museum journey was going to be a wild one. She acknowledged she needed to mentally shift and figure out how to do it completely independently. She invited her audience to come along for the process. That frankness about financial uncertainty is a specific kind of courage. She has spent 15 years as a public figure with a production company covering certain costs. The prospect of building something entirely independently without that infrastructure is genuinely daunting regardless of how committed you are to the plan. She also shared in early 2026 that she had undergone major surgery with a difficult healing journey. The nature of the procedure was not publicly disclosed, but she shared enough for her audience to understand it had been serious and that the recovery had been hard. She is married to Jeremy Shook. Her children are adults. She is building a museum in the city where she was born. Danielle said it was done. Mike said it wasn't. The network also said it wasn't. Nobody formally canceled it. And in the meantime, the people who had been quietly holding the operation together had their own stories to tell. Stories that most casual viewers of American Pickers never fully understood while they were happening. Robbie Wolf, the brother who became essential. Robbie Wolf was never supposed to be a television personality. He was the guy who showed up to help his brother move the heavy stuff, the practical one, the logistics person. The person you call when a 1947 Indian motorcycle needs loading onto a truck at 7 in the morning in rural Arkansas, and nobody else is available. And then Frank Fritz left, and everything changed. Robbie Wolf is Mike Wolf's younger brother. He appeared in 137 episodes between 2010 and 2025. That number alone tells a story. 137 episodes puts him in the same tier as cast members who were formally recruited and positioned as co-hosts. He did not arrive that way. He accumulated that presence organically across 15 years of showing up when the show needed him. His earliest appearances were exactly what his unofficial role suggested. Transport, logistics, the muscle and the van when large finds needed moving from one end of the country to the other. You saw him in early seasons, in brief moments. Loading cars, helping shift architectural pieces. Present, but not primary. The shift happened in 2020. When Fritz took his back surgery halt and did not return, the production faced a straightforward problem. Mike Wolf needed a road companion. The show's format was built around two people. The chemistry of watching one person pick in isolation does not generate the same dynamic as watching a partnership. Robbie stepped in, not as a replacement for Frank Fritz. That difference is important. He never attempted to fill that specific role. The Fritz-Wolf dynamic was built on 40 years of friendship and a shared childhood obsession with old things. That cannot be reproduced by putting a different person in the passenger seat. What Robbie brought instead was something different and something the show could build a new version of itself around: genuine family warmth. The specific chemistry of brothers who have known each other their entire lives and who have a shorthand that does not need to be explained to the camera. Viewers who had grown up watching siblings interact recognized it immediately. His particular expertise leaned toward classic vehicles and large-scale industrial picks. Vintage cars, motorcycles, architectural salvage on a large scale. The kind of finds that require someone who can assess structural weight and practical transport logistics at the same time as evaluating historical significance and commercial value. That is a specific skill set. And it gave the show a vibe that was genuinely different from what it had produced during the Fritz years. The tone shifted. The original American Pickers was a buddy road trip with an antiques wrapper. The post-Fritz version became something closer to a family operation. Mike and Robbie represent a different emotional register from Mike and Frank. Less explosive, more settled. The tension that drove some of the show's most memorable moments in earlier seasons gave way to something warmer and more cooperative. Some fans never accepted the change. The comment sections of the transition season episodes were full of people who wanted Frank back and who could not engage with Robbie's presence because it was a permanent reminder that Frank was gone. Others found the family dynamic genuinely appealing. A show about American history told through objects by a family that cares about those objects has its own kind of integrity. He stepped into an impossible gap. He did not fill it. He created something different in the same space. And for a show that had always insisted on being genuine, that honest approach to an impossible situation was the only one that could have worked. As of 2026, Robbie remains the most consistent presence on the road alongside Mike. Whether American Pickers returns to production or not, whatever comes next in the franchise will almost certainly include him. The brother who showed up to move the heavy stuff became the man who kept the whole operation moving. Jersey John Zaleh, the expert who never left. Jersey John was a friend of the shop long before he was ever a face on the show. That backstory matters, because there is a specific quality that comes from watching someone who genuinely belongs in a world rather than someone who was placed into it by a casting process. Jersey John Saleh has always belonged in the world of American antiques and restoration. He did not arrive through an audition. He arrived through decades of being exactly who he is. His full name is John Saleh. The Jersey comes from New Jersey, where his roots and his accent originate. He appeared in 39 episodes between 2012 and 2025. That spread across 13 years tells you something important. He was never a permanent fixture in the way that Mike and Danielle and Robbie were. He was a recurring presence, the expert you brought in for specific situations. His speciality is antique motorcycles and rare mechanical items. This is not a casual interest dressed up as expertise for television purposes. Saleh's knowledge of vintage motorcycles in particular is genuinely deep. The provenance, the mechanics, the specific identifying features that distinguish a valuable original from a later reproduction. The restoration techniques that preserve integrity rather than destroying it in pursuit of surface appeal. That technical depth gave the show something it genuinely needed in the post-Fritz era. Frank Fritz had brought expertise in toys and advertising items and oil cans. When he left, a specific category of deep knowledge left with him. Jersey John's mechanical expertise occupies a different category, but it provides the same function. Someone on screen who knows things that most viewers do not know and who communicates that knowledge in a way that makes the audience feel like they are learning something real. The question worth answering here is simple. Why did Jersey John stay when so many others departed? His relationship with American Pickers was always project-based and flexible rather than contracted and permanent. He appeared when his specific knowledge was needed. He continued his own restoration work and antiques business alongside the television appearances. He was never solely a television personality. He was always primarily a practitioner who occasionally let cameras document the work. That independence protected him from the scandal that surrounded the show's cast changes in the 2020 to 2025 period. The Frank Fritz departure, the shifting dynamics around Danielle's role, the questions about the show's future. Jersey John existed at the edge of all of those conversations, rather than inside them. His relationship with the program was defined by what he knew rather than by the contractual and personal entanglements that complicated everyone else's situation. He appeared in season 25. He was part of the operation as recently as 2025, according to the episode credits. As the show approaches whatever its next chapter looks like, Jersey John represents the most recently active supporting presence in the entire cast roster. What his involvement suggests about any future production is important. If American Pickers returns to filming and needs someone to provide technical credibility on mechanical and motorcycle-related finds, the infrastructure for that is still in place. He is still working, he is still accessible, he is still the person Mike Wolf calls when something comes through the door that requires a specific level of knowledge the primary pickers cannot provide alone. In a show that has lost Frank Fritz permanently and Danielle Colby practically, the continuity that Jersey John represents is not insignificant. The cast of American Pickers in 2026 is a much smaller circle than it was at the show's peak. But the people who remain in that circle are there because they were always genuinely part of the world. Not because a production company put them there. That is exactly what the show was always supposed to be. The ones who kept the lights on. Behind the main pickers, American Pickers built a world. A specific, populated, consistent world that regular viewers came to recognize across hundreds of episodes. The faces at the shop, the Pix consultant, the assistant who kept the LeClaire operation running. The personality who arrived in the later seasons with a different kind of energy. None of these people were accidents. They were chosen because they fit. And their departures, quiet as most of them were, changed the texture of the show in ways that the audience felt even when they couldn't fully name what was missing. Lauren Ray Grisham, 48 episodes between 2011 and 2022. She was the shop's operational anchor at Antique Archaeology LeClaire during the show's peak years, working alongside Danielle, managing the day-to-day reality of running a retail antiques operation that was simultaneously a television production location. fielding the customer traffic that the show's national exposure generated, keeping the practical machinery of the business moving while the cameras were rolling and while they weren't. Her role was never glamorous in the television sense. She was not picking, she was not negotiating, she was keeping the place functional. And any business owner will tell you that person is often the most valuable person in the operation, regardless of whose name is on the sign. She departed the show around 2022. No public announcement. She simply stopped appearing. Her social media presence has been minimal since her departure, and her current activities are not publicly documented in any meaningful way. She kept her private life private before the show, and she has continued to do so since. Then Dave Ort, 42 episodes across 11 years between 2010 and 2021. His title was Pix Consultant. His function was exactly what that description suggests. An experienced antiques expert brought in to provide specialist knowledge on specific categories of items that the primary pickers encountered. His particular expertise included antique toys, Petroliana, and early Americana collectibles. The exact overlap with Frank Fritz's areas of knowledge is not coincidental. Ort provided a layer of technical credibility in those categories that the format needed. His long relationship with Mike Wolfe predated the show and gave his appearances an easy authenticity that formal expertise alone can never fully provide. He departed around 2021. His exit coincided with the broader cast changes of that period. He has remained involved in the antiques community outside of television, but his public profile since leaving the show is modest. Emily Gwynn appeared in 28 episodes between 2013 and 2021 as a shop assistant at Antique Archaeology. Her role in the LeClaire operation was similar to Lauren Grisham's in its practical orientation, keeping things running, providing the human presence in the shop that the show's format required beyond the picking itself. Her departure around 2021 was part of the same wave of cast changes that reshaped the show's supporting infrastructure during that period. She has maintained a private profile since leaving. And then there is Diamond Dave, 8 episodes between 2019 and 2023, a later addition to the cast who brought a different kind of personality energy to the show's final active seasons. His appearances were less about specialist knowledge and more about the specific chemistry he generated on screen with the primary cast. His current status as of 2026 is the least documented of any of the supporting cast members. Minimal verified public presence. No formal statement about any continuing involvement with the franchise. What the collective absence of this entire supporting layer means for the show is both practical and symbolic. The world of American Pickers was always larger than the people in the van. In 2026, most of the people who populated that world have quietly moved on. The cast that built 27 seasons scattered in every direction. And what remains behind them is a show still looking for its next chapter. What American Pickers is in 2026, 27 seasons, nearly 500 episodes, 1 confirmed death, 1 new show, 1 museum being built, 1 brother on the road, an expert still showing up, and a network that has not said cancel but is not currently filming. That is where American Pickers stands in 2026. The question the fan community keeps asking is a straightforward one. Is it over? And the honest answer is that nobody with the authority to say definitively has said yes, which is not the same thing as saying no. History Channel's official position is careful to the point of being almost meaningless as a statement of intent. They are still airing premieres into 2026. They are not producing new episodes right now. They could go back into production early next year. The word could is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Danielle Colby's position is considerably less unclear. She said it was done on her 50th birthday in December 2025. She said it publicly, and she said it plainly. She then built her next chapter around the assumption that the income was gone and the future was independent. Mike Wolfe's position sits between those two. He argued the cancellation. He launched a new show on the same network that hosts American Pickers. He has not confirmed that season 28 is coming. He has not confirmed it isn't. The show premiered in January 2010 with 3.1 million viewers, making it the highest-rated History Channel debut in years. By September of that same year, a single episode drew 5.3 million viewers in the 25 to 54 age group. That is what the ceiling looked like at the peak. 27 seasons is not a number that gets reached by accident. It requires sustained audience interest, sustained network investment, and sustained cast commitment over a period of time that most television formats never come close to achieving. American Pickers achieved it because the thing at its core was genuine. 2 men who actually loved old things, who actually knew what they were talking about, who had actually been doing this before the cameras arrived and would have kept doing it if the cameras had never shown up. That genuineness is not something you can manufacture once the original cast is gone. It either transfers to the next generation of the operation, or it doesn't. With Robbie Wolf and Jersey John carrying the road presence alongside Mike, the argument can be made that the core value of the format remains intact. They are real. Their knowledge is real. Their relationship with Mike is real. Whether that is enough to sustain a franchise whose defining emotional dynamic was a specific 40-year friendship that ended in death is a genuinely uncertain question. The Nashville location of Antique Archaeology closed on April 2025. The LeClaire, Iowa shop remains the primary physical legacy of everything the show built. Fans still make the trip. The Jello wagon is still there. The iconic motorcycles saved across the show's run are still on display. The shop functions as both a retail operation and a kind of informal museum of the show's own history. What American Pickers permanently changed about American culture is easier to measure than its future. A generation of people who had never thought seriously about old objects started looking at barns and garages and estate sales differently because of what Wolf and Fritz showed them on Monday nights for 15 years. That is a real legacy. It does not disappear because the production hiatus continues. The cast of American Pickers in 2026 looks almost nothing like it did 16 years ago. But the thing that made the show work is still present in the people who carry it forward. Genuine knowledge, genuine passion, genuine friendship. Those things built 27 seasons. They are enough to build whatever comes next. American Pickers was never really about the objects. It was about two guys from Iowa who saw beauty in things everyone else had abandoned, who believed that every rusty, forgotten, dust-covered piece of American history deserved a second look. Frank Fritz is gone. The supporting cast has scattered. The show's future sits somewhere between a network hedging and a cast member saying it's done. But Mike Wolf is still picking. Robbie is still on the road. Jersey John is still in the shop. Some things don't stop just because the cameras do.